Natalie Ann Merchant is an American singer-songwriter and musician. She joined the alternative rock band 10,000 Maniacs in 1981 and left it to begin her solo career in 1993. Early life: Natalie Merchant was born October 26, 1963, in Jamestown, New York, the third of four children of Anthony and Ann Merchant. Her paternal grandfather, who played the accordion, mandolin and guitar, emigrated to the United States from Sicily. His surname was Mercanti before it was anglicized. When Merchant was a child, her mother listened to music and encouraged her children to study music, but she wouldn't allow TV after Natalie was 12. "I was taken to the symphony a lot because my mother loved classical music. But I was dragged to see Styx when I was 12. We had to drive 100 miles to Buffalo, New York. Someone threw up next to me and people were smoking pot. It was terrifying. I remember Styx had a white piano which rose out of the stage. It was awe-inspiring and inspirational." Her mother had show tunes. She had the soundtrack from West Side Story and South Pacific. And then eventually. She'd always liked classical music and then she married a jazz musician, so that's the kind of music I was into. I never really had friends who sat around and listened to the stereo and said, "Hey, listen to this one," so I'd never even heard of who Bob Dylan was until I was 18. During 1988 to 1989, Natalie claimed she still didn't have a TV. "I grew up in a house where no one watched the news on television and no one read the paper. I've been discovering these things as I get older, and the news has affected me more than it ever has before." Merchant started working in a health food store at 16. She considered a career in special education after taking part in a summer program for disabled children. But in 1981 she started singing for a band, Still Life, that became 10,000 Maniacs. Career: 10,000 Maniacs. Merchant was lead singer and primary lyricist for 10,000 Maniacs, joining in its infancy in 1981 while she was a student at Jamestown Community College. The group recorded their album Human Conflict No. 5 and performed a corresponding music video at the Hotel Franklin and at Group W Westinghouse Studios in 1982. Merchant sang lead vocals, and later played the piano as well, for 10,000 Maniacs for 7 studio albums. In 1993 she announced that she was leaving the group. Her last recording with the band, a cover of Bruce Springsteen's "Because the Night at the 10,000 Maniacs MTV Unplugged performance," reached number 11 in the singles chart, becoming the band's greatest U.S. success. Tiger Lily: Merchant has said in interviews that after her split with 10,000 Maniacs she was so eager to begin writing her own material that she went home that very day and composed the song I May Know the Word, which was originally meant to appear on the soundtrack to the Tom Hanks movie Philadelphia. The song was eventually cut from the soundtrack, but it would go on to appear on Merchant's debut solo album, Tiger Lily, which was released on the Elektra label in 1995. Merchant chose to name the album Tiger Lily as she felt it captured the feel of the album, which he described as both fierce and delicate. The third song on the album, Beloved Wife, was featured as the first song in the trailer for the movie Message in a Bottle. The fifth song on the Tiger Lily album, Carnival, was requested by the serial killer Eileen Wuornos to be played at her wake after her execution. It was also played over the end credits to Nick Broomfield's documentary Eileen Wuornos, The Selling of a Serial Killer, which was aired on the Crime Channel. Seeking creative control, Merchant chose to fund Tiger Lily herself, refusing the advance from the record company. She also wanted to work with a core group of young musicians who she felt would be enthusiastic about the music. The group would consist of guitarist Jennifer Turner, bassist Barry Maguire, and former Wallflower and eventual boyfriend to Merchant, Peter Yanovitz, who played drums on the album and who continued to do so with Merchant until their abrupt split in 2000. Tiger Lily was a critical and commercial success, spawning her first top 10 hit in the single Carnival, and achieving top 40 success with subsequent singles Wonder and Jealousy. The album would go on to sell over 5 million copies, and continues to be Merchant a Euro unregistered trademark's most successful album to date. Merchant did extensive touring for the album and made numerous television appearances, including performances on SNL, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and all late-night talk shows. The media's immediate and critical impact on culture and cultural icons was of particular interest to Merchant. In River, a song from Tiger Lily, Merchant defends River Phoenix as she castigates the media for systematically dissecting the child actor after his death. Much of their emphasis was on Phoenix's suspected drug-using lifestyle. In River, Merchant asks, "Why don't you let him be/give his mother and father peace?" Merchant's anger is later replaced with quiet reflection, asking, "It was such a nightmare raving, how could we save him from himself?" Ophelia, 3 years passed before Merchant would release her second solo effort, Ophelia. While Tiger Lily contained a lot of sparse instrumentation, the music on Ophelia featured plenty of lush symphonic arrangements composed and conducted by British composer Gavin Bryars. Merchant treated the recording of Ophelia as a series of workshops, where she would invite various musicians she had met over the years into her home studio to collaborate and record. In the end, 30 different musicians featured on the album, among them Brand New Heavy's frontwoman India Davenport, famed trumpet player Chris Botti, and the husband and wife duo, Don and Karen Perez, from the band The Innocents Mission. While Ophelia is not a concept record in the traditional sense, the album cycle saw Merchant flexing her creative muscles in surprising ways. The name of the album and the title track are a literary reference to Shakespeare's Ophelia, who in the play Hamlet becomes mad and eventually commits suicide when Hamlet remains non-committal and lost in himself. Merchant's Ophelia describes a series of women throughout to women who dared question the patriarchal status quo and who were often castigated for doing so and is a cry for women's rights and for more understanding of female archetypes beyond the scope of the mother, and the whore, both of which severely limit women and attempt to turn them into little more than chattel. The portrayal of the women in the song is a tribute to the non-traditional, the too smart for her own good type of woman who is often misunderstood by society. As a lyric to the title song cries, "Your common sense, your best defense, was wasted and in vain." A reflection of women driven mad by social limitations, Natalie's tribute described Ophelia as being at once a novice Carmelite, a suffragette, a circus queen, a demi-goddess, and a mafia courtesan. The album sleeve saw Merchant pictured in colorful and ornate costumes as each of these different characters. As a companion to the album, she also released a film where she portrays each of these different characters, with voiceovers used for the novice Carmelite, the sweetheart, and the courtesan as they are Spanish, German and Italian, respectively. The first single off the album was a happy and uncharacteristically simple song called Kind and Generous, which received massive airplay on VH1 and which solidified Merchant's role as a bona fide solo artist. That summer, Sarah McLachlan invited Merchant to co-headline the year's biggest music festival with her, Lilith Fair. The exposure from the tour helped the album reach platinum status in just under a year, with subsequent singles Break Your Heart and Life is Sweet receiving moderate airplay on adult contemporary stations. No video was filmed for the latter, however, with a clip from Merchant's appearance on VH1 Storytellers being used instead. She would also go on to appear on PBS Sessions at West 54th and VH1's Hard Rock Live before the year's end. In 1998, Merchant also recorded George Gershwin's But Not For Me for the Red Hot Organization's compilation album Red Hot Plus Rhapsody, a tribute to George Gershwin, which raised money for various charities devoted to increasing AIDS awareness and fighting the disease. The Ophelia tour ended in 1999 with the final few shows being performed and recorded on Broadway. The performance would be released as the album Natalie Merchant, Live in Concert with a companion video of the same name. The performance was notable in that it featured numerous covers including songs by David Bowie, Neil Young, and the Breton Welsh singer-songwriter Catel Kleineg. American Folk Music Tour and Motherland. In 2000, Merchant embarked on a folk tour in the United States with many shows being supported by alt country band Wilco. Merchant's next studio album on the Elektra label was Motherland, released in 2001. Motherland saw Merchant at her most experimental musically. Motherland achieved gold on the Billboard charts after debuting at number 30 on the Billboard 200 and number 13 on the top Internet albums of 2001, respectively. Rolling Stone favored this album with 3.5 stars, and also noticed a difference in Merchant's voice, which was more deep and gritty than her previous albums. Singles that were released from Motherland were Just Can't Last, Build a Levee, and Tell Yourself. Merchant embarked on a year-and-a-half world tour to promote Motherland. The first leg of the tour started in Minneapolis, Minnesota on October 17, 2001, trekking all over the United States, and then heading to Europe with some special acoustic shows in Europe. Merchant also participated in the Rock im Ring Festival and Rock im Park in 2002. In the summer of 2002, she was paired with Chris Isaak and both played at stadiums and arenas. The House Carpenter's Daughter. After her contract with Elektra expired in August 2002, Merchant decided not to sign with them again, or any other major label. Her next studio album, The House Carpenter's Daughter, was released in September 2003 on her own label, Myth America Records. To date, this has been the only release on Myth America. Leave Your Sleep. In October 2009, the official websites of Nonesuch Records and Natalie Merchant announced that she had signed with the label. Leave Your Sleep was released on April 13, 2010 and is a compilation of 5 years of inspiration from a conversation with her daughter over the first 6 years of her life. The album debuted on the Billboard Top 200 at number 17, Billboard Folk Albums at number 1, Amazon.com at number 1, and iTunes, number 3. The album was co-produced by Grammy-winning Andres Levin. Merchant contributed a cover of Buddy Holly's Learning the Game to the tribute album Listen to Me, Buddy Holly, released September 6, 2011. Natalie Merchant. In February 2014, Natalie Merchant announced her self-titled album. The album consists of entirely new works, her first collection of original material since 2001's Motherland. Natalie Merchant was released May 6, 2014 on Nonesuch Records and was named Album of the Week by The Daily Telegraph. The album debuted at number 20 on Billboard's Top 200 Albums and number 2 on Billboard's Folk Albums charts for the week of May 24, 2014. Natalie announced a summer tour where she will kick off the tour in Kingston, New York on July 3, 2014 and finish it at the Pabst Theatre in Milwaukee on July 25, 2014. Personal life. In 2003, Merchant married Daniel de la Calle and had a daughter with him named Lucia. However, in an interview in 2012, she indicated that she is now divorced. She likes gardening and painting. Some paintings can be seen at her official website. She has been a vegetarian since 1980, save for the duration of her pregnancy when she temporarily resumed eating meat. In 1997, she said, "The 60s aesthetic has never really appealed to me, the tie-dyed deadhead running barefoot through the forest on LSD. I don't think that's really me. But I've been a vegetarian for 17 years and I consider myself an environmentalist in as much as I can be, considering the job that I have. I prefer living in the countryside rather than the city. I find it more sane and sustaining for myself." Activism. In 2012, Merchant, along with actor and writer Mark Ruffalo, organized a concert to protest oil and gas fracking in New York State. A documentary, written and directed by John Baumaster, was made of the event, Dear Governor Cuomo. She directed a short 2013 documentary titled Shelter, a concert film to benefit victims of domestic violence, that shone light on a group of women living in the Mid-Hudson region of New York State responding to the crisis of domestic violence in their community with compassion and creativity. Musicians, advocates, criminal prosecutors, victims and survivors all take to the stage, illuminating the darkness surrounding this public health epidemic. Shelter was inspired by an event for 1 Billion Rising, a global campaign calling for an end to violence against women, held on February 14, 2013. Merchant presented a screening of the Shelter film at the Old Dutch Church in Kingston, New York, on the day of 1 Billion Rising for Justice. Discography, with 10,000 Maniacs, Human Conflict No. 5, Secrets of the I Ching, The Wishing Chair, In My Tribe, Blind Man's Zoo, Hope Chest, The Fredonia Recordings 1982 Euro 1983, Our Time in Eden, MTV Unplugged, Campfire Songs, The Popular, Obscure and Unknown Recordings, Solo. 1995, Tiger Lily, 1998, Ophelia, 2001, Motherland, 2003, The House Carpenter's Daughter, 2010, Leave Your Sleep, 2014, Natalie Merchant, Filmography, Films, Television, References. External links, Official website, Natalie Merchant at DMOZ, Natalie Merchant at the Ectophiles Guide to Good Music, Natalie Merchant at the Internet Movie Database, Natalie Merchant discography at Music Brains, launches page on Merchant, Natalie Merchant interview at Music OMH.